my beloved community, Masjid Ibad-ur-Rahman in Marietta. May Allah Ta'ala bless the masjid, its people, its visitors, its maintainers, its administrators, its supporters. And may Allah Ta'ala make it a beacon for true Islam upon the book and the sunnah, the way of the righteous early Salaf. And may Allah Ta'ala guide us and all of you to what is most pleasing to Him. Dear brothers and dear sisters, I thank you and I ask Allah Ta'ala to reward you for inviting me here and attending and thinking well enough of me that we might come together by Allah's permission alone, and success is only from Him, and study some of His tremendous verses about a very relevant topic that we are all heading directly towards, insha'Allah Ta'ala, and that is the fast of the month of Ramadan. And so our goal in the 4 sessions that I'm slated to teach in this seminar, and that is the first one being right now, the second one after Fajr in the morning, insha'Allah Ta'ala, the third one being before Maghrib tomorrow. And you may have an old schedule that has the third session between Maghrib and Isha. They've changed that to make the dinner, the community dinner, after Maghrib. And it's a wise move to accommodate everyone who's fasting in the month of Sha'ban, as a tremendous sunnah from our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَجَزَاهُمْ Allahu khayran. May Allah reward them for their good insight. And then our fourth and final session would be Sunday morning after Fajr. So looking ahead, we have some very beautiful opportunities. Aside from this night's session, every session is going to be connected to the shift change. The shift change that is an amazing thing that happens in the world of the angels. What shift change am I talking about? The angels, يَتَعَاقَبُونَ فِيكُمْ مَلَائِكَةٌ بِاللَّيْلِ وَمَلَائِكَةٌ بِالنَّهَارِ. There are angels that switch places, watching over you by night and by day. وَيَجْتَمِعُونَ فِي صَلَاةِ الْعَصْرِ وَصَلَاةِ الْفَجْرِ. They come together, as found in the hadith, in Bukhari and Muslim. They come together at Fajr and Asr. And the ones who were watching you by night, they leave and depart, so that the ones who watch you during the day will arrive. And at this time they ascend. The ones who watched over you at night, they ascend. They inform Allah Ta'ala about you. And for some of Allah's worshippers, we ask Allah to be from them. They say, تَرَكْنَاهُمْ جِئْنَاهُمْ وَهُمْ يُصَلُّونَ تَرَكْنَاهُمْ وَهُمْ يُصَلُّونَ. We came to them. They were praying. We came at Asr time. And we left them, and they were praying. They were establishing the Salah. That's Fajr time. And the other shift says the same thing after Asr, and they ascend. And they inform Allah Ta'ala. وَهُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِهِمْ. And Allah knows best about all of them. But this dialogue is for our benefit. Fajr and Asr are very important salats, very important prayers to be offered in congregation with the very best of our worship, because the angels report about those deeds that they saw when they came and when they left. And so, on top of that, our class after Fajr, tomorrow morning and Sunday morning, insha'Allah Ta'ala, is a tremendous opportunity to get the reward from Allah Ta'ala for not only Fajr in congregation, but remaining busy with the dhikr of Allah until the sun rises, offering 2 rakats. That's all. Getting the reward of what? Who knows? Hajj and Umrah, but partially, right? Not a whole Hajj and Umrah. Tamma. Complete, absolutely complete reward for Hajj and Umrah. And how much does it cost for Hajj and Umrah? Not this way, but the real way. Traveling, 10,000 plus. Starting at $10,000, right? How much is it going to cost you tomorrow morning? The gas money, $1 or $2 maybe. That's about it. Negligible to get the reward of Hajj and Umrah. So, if we are mindful, and if we are good at being advised, and we are looking forward to Ramadan with hearts that are really in anticipation of proceeding with knowledge first, and we're worried about getting that reward for Hajj and Umrah, all of that, what percentage of us right now would be here in the morning if we are at the very best of our deen? 100% of us. But it's not going to be like that. Allah Ta'ala grants success to some of His worshippers. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make us from those who get that tremendous reward and those who their actions are something that they're overjoyed with on the Day of Judgment. Being sincere for Him alone and being dutiful in obedience to Him. And may Allah Ta'ala forgive us for falling short. Dear brothers, we have, and dear sisters, we have a workbook with us entitled 40 Questions and Answers about the Qur'an's guidance on fasting in Ramadan. And this is a small pack of resources for you for this series of lectures, insha'Allah ta'ala, in study of 5 verses from Surah Al-Baqarah, which are found in the beginning of the booklet on page 3. The 5 verses are there, Arabic and English translation of the meanings. And then let's get into it. Let's look on page 4 of those workbooks, and you see how the workbook is organized. With every verse, there's a series of questions, and there's space for you to take notes. So these are your prompts to listen for the very best of what you can remember and practice, insha'Allah ta'ala, and record that down. Record that in your record here, that maybe one day you'll teach your children from, or you'll share with a spouse or a sibling or someone beloved to you for the sake of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. Let's begin. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge with Allah from the accursed devil. Allah Ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam. O you who have believed, prescribed upon you is fasting. Kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum. As it was prescribed upon those before you. La'allakum tattaqun. In hopes or in order for you, with the goal of you attaining taqwa, fear, consciousness of Allah, dutifulness to Him, observance of His orders, staying away from His prohibitions, all of that being taqwa. That's the verse number 183 from Surah Al-Baqarah. As you see, we have 5 questions about this verse that we'll address insha'Allah ta'ala. The first question is, what is the significance of the phrase Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu? A very significant phrase. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. And if you look this up in a book of tafsir for this verse, what you may find is no explanation at all of the phrase Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. And that is because the phrase Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu has already preceded earlier in Surah Al-Baqarah. That's a methodology that many of the scholars of tafsir have in their books. If a phrase is repeated, they don't explain it anew each and every time. They rely on the previous verse where that was mentioned. So, this is a very significant phrase. It is a call. It's a nida. It's a call from who? From Allah. Allah is calling someone. Who is He calling? His believing worshippers. May Allah make us from those who hear the call and respond favorably. Allahumma ameen. So how significant is this? Well, anyone who's read the Quran, they know there are a select number of verses that begin like this. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. O you who have believed. Comparatively, some of the scholars mention that in the Torah and in the previous revelations, the address would be Ya ayyuhal masakin. O you poor people, with a kind of disrespect that Bani Israel deserved for their constant arrogance and refusal to truly follow their messengers. So this ummah is addressed with words of noble distinction. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. O you who have believed. This is mentioned in the book of Allah Ta'ala a number of times. Do you know how many verses have Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in them? Anyone have a guess? Guess. Give me a rough guess. People who like to guess. 100 is a really good guess. 86. That's even better. It's actually, 97. These are all good guesses. These are really, really close, all of them, for just a guess out of nowhere. It's actually 89 times in the book of Allah Ta'ala. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. All right. So out of all of the commands in the Quran, out of all of the instructions, out of all of the guidance, there are only 89 verses that have this beginning, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. So that makes this a very special occasion, that Allah Ta'ala is introducing something that's special, rulings that are important for people who believe. Ibn Kathir al-Imad, the great scholar of tafsir, Ismail ibn Umar al-Qurashi, he died in the year 774. He said in his tafsir, وَإِنْ جَاءَتِ الْآيَاتُ فِي الْأَحْكَامِ وَالْأَوَامِرِ وَالنَّوَاهِ. Whenever verses come that have rulings in them, with commands, with prohibitions, اشتملت على الأمر بكل معروف حسن نافع طيب محبوب. That will include a command, an instruction to do something, to every good thing that's known and fine and nafi', beneficial, and tayyib, wholesome, and mahbub, and beloved. Meaning, no command is given to you that humiliates you, that causes you to suffer, or to lose and to be deprived of good things. No command like that is found in the book of Allah Ta'ala. Rather, every command is beneficial, wholesome, good in nature. And it has great results and fruits that come after it. And on top of that, وَالنَّهِي عَنْ كُلِّ قَبِيحٍ رَذِيلٍ دَنِيءٍ. And every prohibition, everything you're going to be told not to do, is an ugly thing, a disgraceful thing, a lowly thing unbefitting for believers. You're never going to be told not to do something that's good and wholesome. Rather, everything you're forbidden from is harmful in one way or another. And maybe sometimes you won't realize what the angle of harm is. But have trust in your Lord, Al-Alim, Al-Khabir, Al-Hakim, the all-knowing, the all-knowledgeable, the all-wise, the one who legislated for the people what helps them, what brings them dignity and honor, what brings them maturity and integrity and every good characteristic, and does not command them to do anything that disgraces them or humiliates them or harms them. And we thank Allah Ta'ala for this gracious Sharia. Ibn Kathir continues, كما قال ابن مسعود وغيره من السلف. Like Ibn Mas'ud and others from the Salaf said, إذا سمعت الله تعالى يقول يا أيها الذين آمنوا. Whenever you hear Allah the Most High saying, O you who believe, فأرعها سمعك. Then give it your hearing. Listen up and pay attention. فإنه خير يأمر به. Because it's a good thing you're being instructed to do, that He, Allah, is instructing you to do. أو شر ينهى عنه. Or it's an evil thing that He's forbidding you from. That's the nature of every call from Allah Ta'ala, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala in his tafsir, he mentions three great benefits of these series of instructions beginning with Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. He says, في توجيه النداء للمؤمنين بوصف الإيمان فيه فوائد. In initiating these instructions by calling out to the believers in such a way, by describing them as people who believe, there are some benefits. He mentions three. الفائدة الأولى, the first one, الحث على قبول ما يلقى إليهم. It's an encouragement for them to accept that which is being given to them, وامتثاله, and to implement it. ووجه ذلك أنه إذا علق الحكم بوصف كان ذلك الوصف علة للتأثر به. And that's based on the concept that whenever Allah Ta'ala issues a command and it's connected to a description of the one being addressed, then that description must be connected to the reason why that person is being commanded with that thing. There must be a direct connection. كأنه يقول, as if Allah is saying, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لإيمانكم افعلوا كذا وكذا. Like Allah is saying, like the meaning of it is, O you who believe, based on your iman, or due to your iman, or since you are believers, then do this and do that. Meaning these issues are connected to iman. أو لا تفعلوا كذا. Or don't do this. And this is something that is required and necessary or a complementary element of your iman. الفائدة الثانية, the second benefit, أن ما ذكر يكون من مكملات الإيمان. that whatever is going to be mentioned after Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, then it's something that will complete your iman. It's something that will supplement and fortify and strengthen your iman, وَمُقْتَضَيَاتِهِ, or something required by your iman, by your faith. الفائدة الثالثة, the third benefit, أن مخالفة ما ذكر نقص في الإيمان, that violating whatever comes in that instruction after, O you who believe, is a deficiency. You could say at least a deficiency in one's iman, in one's faith. So again, number one, an encouragement. Number two, that whatever is being commanded will help you complete your iman or fulfill requirements of iman. And number three, if you don't, there's a deficiency in your iman. That's our first point. Let's move on to the second question then. Question number two, what is the meaning of kutiba alaykum? What's the meaning of it's been written upon you? Literally, kutiba, from kataba, right? It's been written upon you. We've translated that as prescribed upon you. But what is the meaning of this kutiba? Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen says kutiba means furidullah. One second here. Furidullah. I'll be with you 1 second. No. We had some disruption to our connection. Sorry about that. Ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, kutiba, ay furidullah. It's become an obligation on you. So written upon you, it could be that qadr is written. Some challenging tragedy that you have to face is written upon you. There's nothing for you to do except to be patient and go through it. That happens. But here kutiba means furida. Legislatively, it's been written upon you that you are required to fulfill it. وَسُمِّيَ الْفَرْضُ مَكْتُوبًا. And obligations have been called maktub. Things written. Things slated, if you wish. لأن الكتابة تثبت الشيء. Because kitaba, writing something, it makes something firm and it makes something fixed in place. وَتُوَثِّقُهُ. And makes it official and ratified. قال الله تعالى, Allah the Most High has said, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا تداينتم بدين إلى أجل مسمى فاكتبوه. O you who believe. Another verse that begins with, O you who believe. Whenever you take a debt, whenever you go into a debt for a set period of time, then write it down. That's verse number 282 from Surah Al-Baqarah. Write it down. Are we writing it down just to fulfill the order of Allah, or is there an illah here? Is there a reason, a point of wisdom that we understand why we're writing that down? Or is it just tawqifiyya? We just obey Allah, we have no idea why we're writing it down. We write it down as an official record, right? In case one party forgets, in case one party neglects the duty, whatever, in case one party dies. Not necessarily a person forgetting or being mischievous or something, but he dies. How do we know? How much money has to come out of his estate to pay off his debts? Because debts they remain with us after we die. So then you can be a very sincere, well-wishing person intending to pay back the loan that you've taken from someone. And so you say, I'm not going to write it down. But Allah Ta'ala instructs us to write those debts down. The point is, writing it down makes it official. Makes it, accountability is there now. It makes it important. Right? So, kutiba alaykum, from this angle, it's been written upon you. It's been prescribed upon you as a duty. It's official. Now, what about kutiba? Sorry about that. Kutiba is something in the Arabic language called mabniyun lil-majhul, or غير المذكور, the passive voice, if you will, in the English language. Like we say, it's been written versus Allah wrote that. So we remove the one who did the writing and we say it was done. Why do we do that? Why do we speak like that sometimes? Sometimes it's out of ta'zeem. خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ. Mankind was created. Are we confused about who did it? No, we know who created mankind. So it's because everyone knows it, we say خُلِقَ al-insan. Mankind was created. And in that is a kind of reverence to Allah Ta'ala. That everyone knows who did it. No need to even mention it. Subhanallah. There's other rhetorical purposes for using passive voice. But here, that's the intended meaning here. Kutiba, bima'na katabahu Allah. Allah is the one who wrote it, but kutiba is used. It was written, it was prescribed out of ta'lim. Everyone knows who prescribed it. Everyone knows who legislates. Everyone knows who ordains duties upon the believers. That is Allah, Rabbul Alameen. Our third point. What is the meaning of siyam? What's the meaning of siyam? Another way to say siyam is sawm. Sama yasumu, sawman wa siyaman. So sawm, what is it? Lughatan, in the Arabic language, it means al-imsak. It means to not do something, to refrain, to hold back, to stay away from something. Al-imsak, to refuse or to refrain from something. And you can say linguistically there's a reference for that in the Quran, and you can even say shar'an, there's a reference for the way the people of the past fasted. Because Maryam was instructed by Allah Ta'ala, وَإِمَّا تَرَيِنَّ مِنَ الْبَشَرِ أَحَدًا فَقُولِي إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنسِيًّا. If any person comes to you, any man comes to you, then say to him, I have vowed unto Ar-Rahman to perform a sawm. We can't translate that as fasting because she explained it. She said, and as a result, falan, the fa here is tafsiriyya. So as a result, lan ukallim al-yawma insiyya. I will not talk to any person on this day. So her fast means no talking. Al-imsaku an al-kalam. It's to refrain from doing something. Here it's to refrain from speech. All right? And it was legitimate sawm. And some of the scholars said that was the fasting that was prescribed on the people of the past. It was vows of silence. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. We know that as well from the story of Zakaria. Zakaria was also made by Allah Ta'ala to remain silent for 3 days as a sign when he asked for a sign. So we know from the people of the past that they had vows of silence that were legislated for them, not innovation. Nothing wrong with doing that. However, today, what if I said I'm going to take a vow of silence in worship, as worship to Allah Ta'ala? I will not speak for 3 days. Bid'ah, innovation in the religion. Had there been good in it, our Prophet ﷺ would have shown it to us. Now, so then, sometimes there are things legislated for the people of the past that are canceled and abrogated and not legislated for us. As for the foundational matters of creed and worship, then those are in general. Those are the same from prophet to prophet and from ummah to ummah. So then linguistically, a sawm is al-imsak. It means to refrain from something. Then, as for what it means in our legislation, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen said, في الشرع فإنه التعبد لله بترك المفطرات من طلوع الفجر إلى غروب الشمس. It is worshipping Allah. Of course, that means with an intention to worship. Ta'abbud here means biniyya. To intentionally worship Allah by leaving off things that break the fast, food, drink, sexual intercourse, from the entrance of Fajr, the entrance of the Fajr prayer, to Ghurub al-Shams, to the sun setting. That is the basic definition of fasting then. And of course it has its manners, it has its obligations, it has its requirements, it has its benefits, and the discussion is long, and much of what we are here to study together connects us to what fasting actually is. Then let's take our fourth question. Then what is the similarity between our fasting and the fasting of the people of the past? Some of the scholars believed that the fasting of the people of the past was to refrain from eating and drinking, just as we refrain from eating and drinking for set periods of time. Some of them even said specifically for Ramadan, just like us. And their evidence is what? كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, as it's been prescribed on the people before you. However, the evidence generally indicates that their fast was different in the hay'ah, in the actual way of fasting, and in the zaman, and in the time periods of fasting, and other things. So then what is it that is the point of resemblance? How is it that we are fasting, or that Allah has prescribed upon us fasting, similar to how the people before us had fasting? What's what they call wajhu shaba? What is the point of similarity? Does anyone know? What is it? A ta'abbud. They were made to be worshippers with fasting. That's good. And also with it, was it optional or obligatory? Furida alayhim, kutiba alayhim. So it's written upon them. So then the shaba, the resemblance, then how does our fasting resemble the fasting of the people of the past? Is that kutiba Allah, katabahu Allah, that Allah wrote it. Kutiba alayna wa alayhim. It was written upon us as an obligation to fulfill, as it was written upon the people of the past as an obligation. And as mentioned, there is scholarly differing about that. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala said, هذا التشبيه فيه فائدتان. So this mention of resemblance, that you're fasting, you've been commanded to fast like the people of the past have been commanded to fast. There's two benefits in hearing it like that and being instructed in this way. Al-fa'idatul ula, the first one, at-tasliyatu, that is consolation, to be consoled. لهذه الأمة, consolation for this ummah. حتى لا يقال كلفنا بهذا العمل الشاق دون غيرنا. So no one could say, we've been made to bear a burden that's heavy and difficult, and we've been singled out with that. Amongst all the nations, this has been something put on us, and it makes a heavy burden on us, and it wasn't something the people of the past had to bear. And the reality of our ummah compared to the previous nations is the opposite. That the difficulties that the people of the past had to undertake religiously were far heavier than what Allah Ta'ala requests from us in a general way. That the people of the past, they weren't given the excuse of coercion. So, for example, they would be held accountable in a state of duress. If someone was torturing them and persecuting them, they couldn't say a word out of coercion and be excused by that coercion. They would be accountable for that. That's difficult. That means you had to die on your religion through torture and whatever they would put on you, and you couldn't say anything to agree with them openly while remaining firm in your belief in your heart in the past. That's something that Allah Ta'ala has made available. As His Messenger said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, رُفِعَ لِي عَنْ أُمَّتِي الْخَطَأُ وَالنِّسْيَانُ وَمَا اسْتُكْرِهُ عَلَيْهِ. It's been removed for me, for my ummah, what we've done out of genuine mistakes, what we've done out of forgetfulness, and what we've done under coercion. But the people in the past didn't have that. So their responsibility was heavier. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said holes would be dug out. They'd be put in the ground and raked with iron combs. The flesh would be raked off of their bodies, and they wouldn't give up their religion. That was their test. They had to stick to their religion through that kind of thing. Today, if we face this kind of thing, you can agree openly while you keep the iman firm in your heart, and you're excused, walhamdulillah, because of the burdens upon us being less. So then it's the opposite anyway. It's not the fact that we've been given fasting and no one else was given it before. We've been given fasting just like everybody else. You're no different. You have not been singled out with anything difficult here. لِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى, due to the statement of Allah the Most High, وَلَنْ يَنْفَعَكُمُ الْيَوْمَ إِذْ ظَلَمْتُمْ أَنَّكُمْ فِي الْعَذَابِ مُشْتَرِكُونَ. As Allah it reminds us that we like to be consoled with other people going through similar experiences with us. But it won't benefit you on this day, addressing the people of the hellfire, as you have been oppressive, and now you're in the hellfire, all of you together sharing. The fact that you have others suffering like how you're suffering will be no consolation in the hellfire. However, in this life, if you're going through something very difficult, extraordinarily difficult, that one Muslim who reaches out to you and puts his hand on your shoulder and he says, I went through this last year, or I've been through this recently. Can I help you with some advice? Like that. You know how important that is, because we feel alone sometimes with some very specific tragedies and trials we have to face. And it's so meaningful. That's why we have to be brothers to one another. We have to know each other's problems. We have to reach out with good advice. It's so meaningful when that person comes up to you and says, I've been through this, let me help you. It is one of the most meaningful and helpful things at that time of distress. We ask Allah Ta'ala to increase us in our brotherhood and our love for His sake. يعني لن يخفف عنكم العذاب اشتراككم فيه. The meaning of that verse in Surah Al-Zukhruf, the 39th verse, is that you being together in the hellfire, facing punishment together, is not going to lighten that up on you at all. كما هي الحال في الدنيا, as normally experienced in this worldly life. Meaning when you're together going through hardships with other people, it makes the hardship lighter. فإن الإنسان إذا شاركه غيره في أمر شاق هان عليه. Whenever a person faces something difficult with others together, that makes it easier on him. ولهذا قالت الخنساء. This is why Khansa said, and she was lamenting or remembering the death of her brother, and this is from the poetry of Jahiliyyah before Islam. وَلَوْلَا كَثْرَةُ الْبَاكِينَ حَوْلِي عَلَىٰ إِخْوَانِهِمْ لَقَتَلْتُ نَفْسِي. Had it not been for so many people crying around me about their brother, Sakhar, that was her brother, that she always wrote poetry about when she lost him. Had it not been for all these people crying, then I would have killed myself. وَمَا يَبْكُونَ مِثْلَ أَخِي وَلَكِنْ أُسَلِّ النَّفْسَ عَنْهُ بِالتَّأَسِّي. And no one is cried about like my brother. However, I console myself with the examples that I have around me. Meaning, everyone is suffering and everyone is sad. That gives me some consolation. Something known to the people. That's the first benefit. Is that when you're told, this is not just for you, everyone had to do this, gives you a feeling of consolation. Al-fa'idatu thaniya, the second benefit in being told you're made to fast like the people of the past were made to fast, استكمال هذه الأمة للفضائل التي سبقت لها الأمم السابقة. That this ummah, this nation, we complete all of the good things, all of the virtues that had preceded amongst the previous nations. We're not left out of any of those virtues, and fasting is a great virtue and benefit. ولا ريب أن الصيام من أعظم الفضائل. No doubt, fasting is from the greatest of all virtues, all virtuous actions. فالإنسان يصبر عن طعامه وشرابه وشهوته لله عز وجل. So a person refrains from his food, his drink, his desires, for the sake of Allah, the Majestic and the Mighty. ومن أجل هذا اختصه الله لنفسه. And for this reason, Allah has made fasting something for Himself to reward. Meaning, without telling you the exact measure of the reward, He leaves it to Himself. فقال تعالى, and He has said in the famous hadith Qudsi collected by the two Imams al-Bukhari and Muslim, كل عمل ابن آدم يضاعف الحسنة عشر أمثالها إلى 700 ضعف إلا الصوم. All of the deeds of the son of Adam, they're multiplied. The reward is multiplied from 10 times over up to 700 times over, except for fasting, except for as-sawm. فَإِنَّهُ لِي وَأَنَا أَجْزِي بِهِ. That is for me alone. Meaning, to obscure the reward, to keep it ambiguous and not tell you, and to leave it for Him. And then, it's left to Al-Mannan, Al-Wahhab, Al-Kareem. It's left to the generous one, the all-giving and ever-bestowing. So, it's immeasurable, subhanallah. That fasting, that reward is for Allah, as He says, يَدَعُ شَهْوَتَهُ وَطَعَامَهُ مِنْ أَجْلِي. A person, he praises the fasting person, saying he leaves off his desires and his food for my sake. May Allah Ta'ala make us from those who fast with sincerity to Him. So the second benefit then is to attain the high ranks and the virtues that the previous nations enjoyed through their worship, we're not deprived of that either. Question number 5 then, what is the greatest overall goal of fasting? What is the greatest overall goal of fasting? You might know it from the verse, right? It's in the verse. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. In order for you to attain taqwa. And so Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen says, in this verse is فِيهَا فَضْلُ التَّقْوَى. The great status, the great virtue of taqwa. وَأَنَّهُ يَنْبَغِي سُلُوكُ الْأَسْبَابِ الْمُوصِلَةِ إِلَيْهَا. And so it's a must that we take the pathways that lead towards taqwa, that we take the steps needed to accomplish piety. لأن الله أوجب الصيام لهذه الغاية. Because Allah has required fasting, He's made fasting a duty for this major goal. إذن هذه الغاية غاية عظيمة. And this goal is a tremendous goal. ويدل على عظمها أنها وصية الله للأولين والآخرين. And what indicates how great that is as a goal to attain taqwa, it is the admonishment, the legacy of advice that Allah Ta'ala has given all of the people, the first of them to the last of them. لِقَوْلِهِ ta'ala, because Allah Ta'ala has said, وَلَقَدْ وَصَّيْنَا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ أَنِ اتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. And we have certainly left a wasiyah, an admonition, a reminder, an advice to those who were given the book before you and you as well, that you are to have taqwa of Allah, you are to fear Allah, observe your duty to Him, be conscious of Him, and so on. The word taqwa cannot be translated into one word, whether it's fear or consciousness or piety. The word taqwa has extensive meanings. And to explore that a little bit, look at how Allah Ta'ala mentions the pious people. After mentioning a principle about people getting what they deserve based on their actions, listen to what Allah Ta'ala has said in Surah At-Tur. Islawha fasbiru aw la tasbiru sawa'un alaykum. Enter into it, addressing the people of hell. Enter into it, be patient or don't be patient, it's the same on you. May Allah save us from the hellfire. إِنَّمَا تُجْزَوْنَ مَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. You are only now being recompensed for what you did. This is al-jaza' min jins al-amal. You brought evil, you brought filth, now you live in the filthy existence of the hellfire. Or you don't live there. لَا يَمُوتُونَ لَا يَمُوتُ فِيهَا وَلَا يَحْيَا. You don't die there and you don't actually live there either. There's just makth, you just exist, you just go on there. It's not called life. Wallahu al-musta'an. إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَنَعِيمٍ. The people of taqwa, introducing taqwa here, people of taqwa are called muttaqun. These muttaqin, they're in gardens and in delight. Comparatively, watch this. Remember, al-jaza'u min jins al-amal. What you reap is what you sow. You get what you deserve. What you do, you get it back. فَاكِهِينَ بِمَا آتَاهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ. They're enjoying, basking in the good things that their Lord has given them. وَوَقَاهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ عَذَابَ الْجَحِيمِ. وَوَقَاهُمْ. And Allah gave them wiqaya. Allah gave them protection and safety from the punishment of al-jahim, the hellfire. And then He says, كُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا هَنِيئًا بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. Eat and drink happily and enjoy based on what you used to do. May Allah make us from them. These verses are from Surah At-Tur, as mentioned, verses 16 to 19. So then look at how they were people of taqwa. اتَّقَوْا فَوَقَاهُمُ اللَّهُ الْعَذَابِ. They practiced taqwa, so what did they get? Wiqaya. They got protection from Allah, from the hellfire. Protection granted by Allah from the hellfire. That connects us to the meaning of the word taqwa. It's ittikhad wiqaya min adhabillah. It is to, this is based on the linguistic meaning of taqwa. It's to take for yourself some kind of protection, a layer, if you will, of protection, and that is obedience to Allah, fear of his punishment, hope in his reward, worship of him alone, and so on, that which would protect you from his anger and punishment. One of the best definitions offered by the Salaf is that offered by Talq ibn Habib al-Tabi'i, the great student of the Sahaba named Talq ibn Habib. He died between the year 90 and 100, somewhere in there. And he said, as mentioned by Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah in Minhaj al-Sunnah al-Nabawiyah, Talq ibn Habib said, التقوى أن تعمل بطاعة الله على نور من الله. Taqwa means that you act with deeds, that you behave with acts of obedience to Allah upon a light from Allah, ilm, knowledge and insight. Tarju rahmat Allah, hoping for mercy from Allah. Wa an tatruka ma'siyat Allah, and it also means that you abandon disobedience of Allah, ala nurin min Allah, with light from Allah, by way of light provided by Allah. Takhafu iqab Allah, in fear of the punishment of Allah. That's the statement of Talq ibn Habib. It's 6 things. Taqwa then is 6 things. What are those 6 things? Acts of obedience done based on light from Allah, with the intention of the mercy, gaining mercy of Allah. That's 3. Then the other 3 are connected to disobedience. Abandonment of disobedience upon light from Allah, hoping for protection from the punishment of Allah, fearing the punishment of Allah. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah comments, saying, وَبِالْجُمْلَةِ فَكَوْنُ الْمُتَّقِينَ هُمُ الْأَبْرَارِ الْفَاعِلُونَ لِلْفَرَائِضِ الْمُجْتَنِبُونَ لِلْمَحَارِمِ. That fact that the people of taqwa, the muttaqun, are people of piety who they fulfill obligations and they stay away from prohibited matters. هو من العلم العام الذي يعرفه المسلمون خلفا عن سلف. It's from the general knowledge that all the Muslims know, from the oldest of the Muslims to the most recent ones. وَالْقُرْآنُ وَالْأَحَادِيثُ تَقْتَضِي ذَلِكَ. The Quran and all of the narrations require that. Taqwa means the obedience of Allah Ta'ala, as has been mentioned. And you'll hear in some verses, bir and taqwa. And bir means piety, and taqwa means piety. So, why do we have the word bir and taqwa? The scholars mention that they're interchangeable, they're synonymous, but like any synonyms, when they're mentioned together, إِذَا اجْتَمَعَ افترقا, whenever they're mentioned in the same text, then that means they take on more specific individual meanings. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. So you're commanded by Allah in Surah Al-Ma'idah to cooperate with one another in acts of bir, piety, and taqwa, piety. So then what's the distinction? The scholars, they say, al-bir is proactive and taqwa is defensive. What does that mean? There's a kind of piety where you perform things and you fulfill things and you do things. And there's a kind of piety where you restrain yourself and you don't do things. And a taqwa, when paired with bir, is that piety, the piety of restraint. Does that connect us very well to Ramadan? Do we learn restraint in Ramadan? Does that make sense that the very basis of what we're doing is refraining from food and drink, developing sincere integrity of restraint, learning to be pious by avoiding things. And then other acts in Islam are proactive, piety through accomplishing something or doing something or fulfilling something. However, in some texts, they're used as synonyms. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَيْسَ الْبِرُّ بِأَن تَأْتُوا الْبُيُوتِ مِنْ ظُهُورِهَا. Piety, bir, is not that you come to the houses, that you return home from the back doors. That's not an act of piety. Or from the front doors. وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنِ اتَّقَى. However, piety is having taqwa. So bir is defined as taqwa. So sometimes they're used synonymously, meaning obedience to Allah, not how you return to your home and what door you enter through from the practices of jahiliyyah, but piety is obedience to Allah, observing the duties of your duties to Allah Azza wa Jal. Naam. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. Then, shall we continue or shall we pick up tomorrow morning? Tomorrow morning? Jayyid. Barakallahu feekum. Then, we have to push ourselves to accomplish a little more than we've done tonight. But the first initial lecture that we started late, first of all, and there's a bit of an introductory matter that was presented. Hopefully we can accomplish a pace of about 12 questions per session. Now I remind myself and all of you about the great virtue of Salatul Fajr in congregation. We've just accomplished something amazing, and that is Salatul Isha. Al-Jama'ah, praying Isha prayer in Jama'ah. Don't lose sight of what a great blessing this is, and thank Allah Ta'ala for having favored you with this blessing. That's like praying half of the night in voluntary prayer. And the other half of the night praying in voluntary prayer will be rewarded to you if you make the Fajr prayer. So complete the other side of this great virtue. Come at Fajr, push yourself away from your bed and gravitate towards what you'll be happy with on the Day of Judgment, attending the masjid for Salatul Fajr and benefiting, learning the tafsir, the meanings of the Book of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala in cooperation with your brothers and sisters. May Allah Ta'ala bless us all and give us success in going to sleep as believers and waking up as believers, seeking out the best ways to draw near to Him. وصلي اللهم وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.